it's Christy. Welcome to day 14 of my 2021 holiday card series. Today I'm going to be using Hello Bluebird's Sweet Christmas to make a card. So I have stamped out my images with Lawn Fawn jet black ink on some Spectrum Noir Ultra Smooth Premium White cardstock, and I'll be coloring with my Copic markers. For my gingerbread kids, I started out with E31, E33, and E35. So I laid in my shadows with the E35 on this first little gingerbread girl and then began to blend that out. I thought I was holding the E33 marker, but it turned out that it was the E31. So I'm going to fill in the rest of her by accident with the E33, which is a bit darker. And because of that, she was really looking very flat and didn't have a lot of dimension on her. So I tried doing a second layer on her to see if that would beef up the saturation enough that you could see enough contrast for the style of coloring that I prefer myself. And just went over that one more time with each of those shades in the correct order this time. And it did help a bit, but it still was looking a little too flat. So I decided to pull in a darker shade and start with the E37 this time. And this time I was a lot happier. So she's a little bit darker than the other two guys are going to turn out, just because she has 3 layers and they're only going to have 2. But that's okay. She's just a little bit more crispy brown, I guess. So I think it all works out just fine. So I went in the reverse again with all 4 shades this time. I decided to go ahead and leave in that E31 to try to create, some more dimension on there. And then when I started coloring the boys, I'm going to begin from the first with the E37 because I did like how that made the edges look like they got a little bit more toasty in the oven. So I thought that was kind of fun. So then I'm going to take the E35 and begin to blend that out, and I'll work my way down through all 4 shades for him as well. Since he's facing toward the left, I'm going to do his shadows mainly on the right side of his body, so he'll have a highlight on his face, whereas the other 2 are pretty much facing forward, so I kept their shadows a little bit more equal on both sides. The only exception is the lower part of the girl's body, since she's kind of twisted toward the left a little bit, holding that gumdrop. I added her shading on the right side for that part of her. So I absolutely love this stamp set. I think it's super duper cute, and I can't wait to use it again. I absolutely love that really big gingerbread house. I think it is just beautiful. I was so excited when I saw it. I have already colored it just as a practice off screen for another card, which I have not put together. I just colored the gingerbread house on its own just because I wanted to see how long it would take me. But I will be doing that for a video a little bit later on. I just wanted to do a little bit more of a simpler card today. So these guys are going to be going inside a snow globe, so I just needed a few of the images. For the little tree, I wanted that to be a frosted gingerbread cookie. So I'm taking that E37 and putting it in a couple of the little corners where I thought maybe it would get darker. And then I'm going to blend out with the E35, just bringing that toward the middle of each of those sections. On this one, I'm only going to use the darkest 3 shades. I didn't bother with the E31 since the real estate there is very limited, but I do think it looks really nice with those 3 shades all together. It's, cookies always have a little bit of a different brown edge there, so I think that kind of resembles that. And then for the frosting, I wanted to go with a really pale minty green. So I chose G quadruple 0, G00, and G02. And I'm adding that G02 on the right hand side and then taking it over just a little bit toward the center to kind of separate each of those sections out. I didn't want to do it too much because it is supposed to be frosting, but I wanted there to be just a little bit of a delineation there. And then I blended out with the G00 and filled in with the G quadruple 0. And I did do a second layer off screen just as I did for all of the images. Then I wanted to do the little girl's bow on her head. So I used G02 and G00, but I wanted a bit more contrast. So I added in the G03 as well and blended that out with the G02. And then I'm going to do the smaller gumdrop with these shades, starting with that G03. And I'm doing my shading on the right hand side. Again, I think I kept that pretty much consistent for all of the accessory images. So I'm going to do the little boy's bow tie as well. I wanted to keep a very limited color palette of just like minty green and pink with the brown of the kids, obviously. I also did the buttons on the other boy's chest. And then I took the G quadruple 0 and used that for the whites of the little Santa hat. And I'm also going to do the whites of the candy cane stick. And then for the pink combo, I'm going to use R11, R20, and R22. So I'm going to start with the gumdrop that's in the little girl's hand, and I'm going to do the shading on the right hand side once again with that R22, blending out with the R20 and kind of like a curve, and then the R11 to fill things in. I accidentally grabbed the R11 second again. I don't know why I did that. So it was, I had to do that second layer to really beef up that saturation so you could see the difference. And then I'm going to do the Santa hat in pink as well. So there's not going to be any red on this card. I wanted something that was a little bit more of a pastel tone for this Christmas card, since it is supposed to be gingerbread cookies. And if you do any baking, you'll probably know that it's very, very hard to get a true red without it tasting really terrible. Like, you need so much red food coloring in your frosting to get a really true red. Unless maybe if you use the gels, it might not be so bad, but like the little dropper bottles, you need so much of that stuff. So typically you end up with a pink instead of a red, and so I thought that would kind of be sweet to mimic that. So I'll do the other stripes on the candy cane as well. And then I'll also do the 3 little dots over to the side. I'm figuring those are like either candies or large sprinkles. And so I'm just going to have those be the same pink, all 3 of those, so they'll look really nice against that green cookie. And then I wanted to give the kids some rosy cheeks just to make them look extra cheerful. So I started with the R20, but it wasn't showing up very well on them, so I went over that with the R22, and then I'm going to blend that out with the R20. And it's not super visible, but it does add just a little extra detail to them that I think looks really cute. So now I'm going to add a lot more detail to these guys. I love the fact that their little white rickrack, or whatever you want to call it, is not in the stamp, so that you can add it yourself and you can really have fun and do different stuff. So I'm going to do a different design on each of these guys. For this first one, I'm doing like a little loop. So I did that on each of his hands and legs, and then I'm carefully going around his head and adding a little bit more of that there. And then for the second guy, I decided to do something that was like a little bit more of like jagged lines. So it's almost like an backwards N. And I'm doing that on his hands and legs as well. and then on his head. And this one didn't end up being my favorite. It kind of looks like a hedgehog, but that's okay. Maybe he has like a spiky hairdo or something. It's totally fine. That's half the fun, is trying something new. And then for the little girl, I'm just going to do some little scallops. So I did the bottom edge of her dress and then her arms and legs. And then I'm going to do the same thing on her head. So just carefully going around that bow and connecting those lines until they all have their own little details, which I think is so fun. I can't wait to play even more with these guys. I'm going to take my black Sakura jelly roll and go over their eyes so they're nice and bright and shiny, and then I'll trim these images out with their matching dies. For my background, I've die cut a piece of Bristol Smooth Surface cardstock with one of the dies from the Snow Globe Builder, which I'll show you that die set a little bit later on. And I'm going to blend on some cracked pistachio Distress Oxide ink. So I started toward the bottom and I'm blending up, but I wanted to keep it fairly pale. So I am using very light pressure, and I even left a big white space at the top so that you get a nice highlight, and then just went around the outside edge. And then I kind of assessed it from there, and I felt like it needed just a bit more at the bottom, so it was more of like an ombre look and faded toward the top, but was a little bit darker toward the bottom. So I added a bit more ink, and then I'm going to set that aside to dry for a bit. I'll be adding some more detail to that in a little bit later. And then I'm going to take another piece of Bristol and blend on the cracked pistachio all over the entire panel. So again, I wanted the center to be lighter and the outside edges to be darker, like a vignette. So I'm just going around those, but I'm being more heavy-handed this time because I want there to be enough contrast from that snow globe and the background piece. I'm gonna almost make my own pattern paper kind of. So I'm going to just keep on blending that until it's saturated to the point that, you know, I'm happy with it and feel like there will be enough of a difference so that they can sit on top of each other. And then I'll blend in the center so it's a little bit lighter than the rest of it. The edges still weren't quite dark enough for me, so I went back on with another round of that cracked pistachio. Thought about adding a little bit of a darker ink, but I was trying to stay with this pale pastel color palette, so I decided not to. I just used the cracked pistachio. I will use a touch of a different ink in a minute, but first I'm going to press some of that cracked pistachio onto an acrylic block, water it down, and then I'm going to flick that all over the background to add some, you know, variation and some detail to that. And then, like I said, I wanted to add a little bit of contrast. I didn't want it to be super dark, so I'm just going to do the splatter with some Lucky Clover. And this time I'm kind of tapping that brush on the edge of the block so I get a super fine splatter because I didn't want it to be too overwhelming. So I'm going to do that all over that panel, and then my last step for this background is to take some of the pearly shade of the Gansai Tambi Starry Colors, and I'm going to add that all over that background as well so that it looks like snowfall, and also when you tip it in the light you get this nice flash of that pearl color that just is so pretty. So that is going to finish that one off. I'm going to set that aside to dry. And then I'm going to go back to my snow globe piece, which has dried a bit, and I'm going to take this little peppermint swirl, and I'm going to use that as a snowflake. So I'm going to stamp that in the background using that same cracked pistachio ink, just doing it here and there so they're nicely spread around and making sure that a few of them kind of hang off the edge of the panel. So there is that snow globe builder die set, and I'm going to start adhering the pieces that I've cut apart. I cut two little snow drifts with that same die so that I could layer those on top of one another and create a bit more dimension. And then I cut the outer rim of that with some Lawn Fawn guava cardstock because it has that pinky tone. It's just a little bit more vibrant. It's very similar to that salmony pink that I use with the R22. It's actually probably closer to the R24, but I think it works for this frame to be a little bit bolder. So I'm carefully gluing that down with some Barely Art Precision Craft Glue, making sure that that is lined up nicely with the edge. And then I've got a piece of Lawn Fawn light brown wood grain cardstock, and I'm going to glue that over the base of the snow globe and just make sure everything is lined up by pressing it on my desk, and then I'll set that aside and work on my sentiment. So I'm going to use a sentiment that is from the Merry Little Christmas stamp set, and I'll show you that in a second as well. I love these tiny little sentiments. There's a nice variety in that set, but these tiny ones fit perfectly in that little die that is for the sentiment on the snow globe builder. So there is that stamp set there. I stamped Believe in the Magic. And then I'm going to pop my card base in my MISTI. I'm using a piece of Lawn Fawn craft cardstock. I'm stamping my favorite little girl from the set with her little bag of frosting and the sentiment Sweet Christmas Wishes and 2 candy canes. So now I'm ready to start assembling everything. I'm going to glue my splattered background to my card front, and that is a standard A2 size card. So it's 4 1/4 wide by 5 1/2 tall with a top fold. So I've smoothed that into place, and now I'm trying to decide if I wanted to pop up that snow globe or just glue it flat to the card. I almost popped it up, but I thought it would be nice to just adhere it flat so it would be really easy to mail for Christmas. So I'm going to line that up in the center of my card, just make sure that there is equal distance from the top and the bottom and both sides, and then press that down. And then I'll pull in my images so I can start decorating this scene. So on the very back snow drift, I'm going to add that Christmas tree cookie and also the little gingerbread man that's kind of twisted to the left. He's going to be decorating that. And then a little bit closer to the eye on the right hand side, I'll add the little girl with her gumdrop. And then down front on the left, I'm going to add this little guy with his hand upraised. And then I'm going to take that peppermint stick and make that his walking stick. So I'll just add that in his left hand. And he's also going to wear the Santa hat. So he's kind of welcoming you to this little gingerbread village inside the snow globe where all of the snowflakes taste like peppermints. So I'll take the little candies or sprinkles and add one into the gingerbread man's hand, and then the other 2 I'm going to use to decorate the tree. So I have one toward the top and then one toward the bottom. And then I'll take the small gumdrop and add that in front of the little girl as if she's kind of placing a walkway there for you. And then I have that little bow that originally I was going to put on top of the tree, but decided instead to put it at the top of the snow globe, and I really like how that turned out. So I've trimmed out that sentiment with that little die that comes with the snow globe builder set, and I'm going to add that right over top of that wood grain piece. And now I am ready to add some stickles. So I'm pulling out my favorite Stardust stickles, especially on stuff like this because it really looks like sugar. So I'm going to add that to the 3 little candies. And for some reason I'm having a lot of trouble with this bottle of stickles. So I had to unclog it really quick. And then I just finished placing that down, and then I'm going to go over and add it to my gumdrops, of course, because they need a lot of it because it looks just like a gumdrop once you add it. I put a little on the edge of the candy cane, and then I also put it on the bows of the two that are wearing one and the buttons on the other guy and the bow at the top. I just went crazy with this stuff because, you know, it's a sugar cookie world or a gingerbread world. There should be a lot of sugar. So once I had that all finished, I decided to add some to the centers of those little peppermints, and then I dot some in the spaces between, just so there's like a little tiny pop of sparkle. And that is going to complete this card. So I'll lift that up to the light so you can see how pretty it is when you tip it, and I'll give you another peek at the inside. So leave me a comment down below and let me know if you've ever baked gingerbread men or put together a gingerbread house. I would love to hear about it. And if you enjoyed it, please be sure to hit the like button and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss any future videos. I post new ones every Monday and Friday. If you'd like to pick up any of the products that I used today, you'll find them listed and linked in the description bar below. And if you'd like to keep watching, here is day 14 of the previous 2 years of holiday card series. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have an amazing day. Bye-bye.